In today's mini episode of Not Nice Clever, we are sharing public speaking tips for introverts. This also applies to extroverts too. You can totally take it and run with it. And when we say public speaking, we don't just mean on stage in front of 1,000 people, because while Candace and I have done that, honestly, public speaking can literally apply to just talking to one other person because you're speaking to another human being that's not in your head. That's a form of public speaking. Or it can be speaking up in a team meeting or literally at the grocery store talking to your cashier, unless they have self checkout. So, uh, public speaking tips, Candace.
So the first thing is you want to be prepared. Sometimes people think that they could just wing it. And I do not recommend that at all. I like to know exactly who I'm going to be talking to. Who is this audience? What do they already believe? Why are they here? Understanding why they're there and who they are, whether they know you or don't know you, what their background knowledge is on the material you're bringing to them, will help you to have a better presentation. So, for example, if I am going to speak at a brokerage and I'm talking about personal branding and they've never had experience with any training about branding before, and they're maybe more of a traditional brokerage, then I know that there's some high level things that I'm going to have to make little baby steps for them to access. But if I'm walking into a room with a bunch of people who are going to a branding conference, I know that they're already bought into branding. I know that they already like this topic. They've probably already done some of their own research on the speakers. And so now I'm talking to them at a different level, and it's going to make for a better conversation, which is also something I think that you should be thinking about as you are speaking in public. Is stop thinking about you just speaking and thinking about how can I make this feel more like a conversation?
So important to know your audience, because if you know who you're talking to, it's a lot easier to have a conversation. And one of my favorite things to do, and this is going to depend on the venue or the format or, your comfort level, but I love to share personal stories in my talks, in my webinars, in workshops, that you and I do, Candace, because when you are recounting a story, you already kind of naturally let your personality shine through. And it's a great way to warm up the audience. And really, all it takes, it doesn't matter if you're speaking to a room of 5 people or 50 or 500, you really only need like one person to crack a smile or one person to chuckle. And then that one person, it just like that energy kind of like sifts and absorbs into the rest of the room. And then you've got them, and using personal stories, obviously not going too overboard with it, but finding something that's relevant to what you're talking about. So, in your example, Candace, if you're speaking on personal branding, we might share how it was really odd the first time that we showed up to a conference after having had a podcast for a year, and people we had no idea who they were coming up to us and saying how much they loved our podcast.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, the personal brand is working. Also, Candace, do you know who that person's name is? Like, no, I was going to
No
ask you.
idea.
And we're like, shit. Okay, let me quickly Instagram, like stalk this person, see if we can figure it out, because she knows our name and I feel really bad. Stories are fun,
Yes. Stories are fun.
right?
There's one exercise that I did in a workshop one time that I love to kind of help me understand who's in the seats. And I
Yeah,
make the audience stand up and I ask a
of course
series
you
of
do.
questions. Yeah, of course I do. Movement really helps. I highly recommend using movement if it makes sense for what you're doing. So just having everyone stand up and then I ask a series of questions so I get a sense of where they are on the topic. So I talk obviously a lot about content. So I would say, okay, if you're able to, please everyone stand up. And if you've made a reel in the last month, please sit down. If you've done this in the last this time, please sit down. And kind of they just get progressively more challenging, right? And then I see how many people have sat and I know in my mind, got it, know who's in this room now. I can make small adjustments in the type of stories that I share and in the tips that I give based on that visual of where people are.
I love that. Yeah, anytime you can incorporate movement, like you said, Candace, getting the people involved. Public speaking is not you delivering a speech. It's you having a conversation where you might be doing the majority of the talking, but the involvement is like throughout, and getting people like actually to involve their bodies in the whole experience is
The energy matters for sure. And being able to be a manager of the energy in the room is going to make you a better public speaker.
another thing that I want to share. And I'll be like super real with the Clever Crew about this, because public speaking, in that I am going up on stage or doing a breakout or like, with a mic in my hand, like that type of public speaking is relatively new for me. I think it's been newer in the last like 2 years. So like in my whole career, it's like new and I'm growing and I'm learning a lot. When I first started like doing speaking like that, I was surrounded by a lot of very charismatic and energetic speakers, people that were very bombastic, people that would like, modulate their voices, and they would use their hands and they would pace back and forth like a lion on stage. And I remember telling Candace one time, because you and I've presented, what were you were about to say something? Were you going to say something?
No, no. I'm just picturing all these things happening on stage.
Thank you. It was a very colorful time. But like the thing that happened was, and it's so funny, I started comparing myself and how I would speak. I would not pace back and forth. I'm not a natural type of speaker to do that. And my voice usually stays very steady. I'm often told that I could do like voice, like audiobooks because of my voice. I think Dom even said the same thing about when our
Yeah.
podcast first launched. He's like, you and Kat could totally
It's
do
like
this
the
at
both of you
ASMR.
guys. Yeah.
So I started comparing myself and thinking and getting in my head that their speaking style, I needed to copy it.
Mm.
And I remember I shared this like comparisonitis like moment with you, Candace, and you were like, just go up there, tell the people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and just do it, just be you. And now I was recently watching back like some short clips that my editor had put together from a recent keynote I did. And then I just shared with you right before we hopped on here. I have stage RPF, man. But like it worked, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
speech was well received and there were great moments, but you just have to figure out your speaking style.
I think that's really important because like my speaking style is very different than Kat's on stage. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can look like I'm yelling, look like I'm scolding, like I can be just really in it, and I will have not even RBF. I was like more it's a more active bitch face, not
It is
resting bitch
activated.
face. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
activated.
It's active
Um
bitch face.
yeah.
You'll have
Um
ABF.
Right. So I'm not smiling on stage much either. And if you watch any of my clips from stage on Instagram, you can see that. But
Mm-hmm.
like my tone is very direct. And I even sometimes when I watch back, I'm like, oh, I'm like literally yelling. I don't know that I'm doing it at the moment. Um, but that's just how I speak. And maybe it's going back to being an eighth grade teacher. You gotta raise your voice or no one's gonna pay attention. I don't know. But it works for me. And if I
Mm-hmm.
tried to be softer and sweeter and more caring, people would, be able to sniff that out really quick and be like, something's not right there. Something feels a little bit off because it's not who I am.
Yeah, and I would say, another like follow-up tip to this is it will probably take like 6 to 7 speaking engagements, whether it's literally like doing a lunch and learn at your team office, or doing a webinar, or being a part of a panel, or whatever it is. It'll take several times for you to start to understand how you show up on stage, because it's not like you're a completely different person, but you do kind of take on this different persona that's still authentic to you.
It's just larger. It's you times
Yeah.
100. That's it.
Mm.
Because just like going back to the idea of, how people put on plays and their
Yeah.
makeup has to be more exaggerated and their
Yeah.
movements have to
Yes.
be more exaggerated. Like when you're on stage, you just have to amplify everything because it
Mm-hmm.
is going to come across as smaller than what you think. So just
Yeah.
something to consider. I have actually a tip that I want to give to people who might be starting out, because if you're just starting out, lots of times people start out maybe on a panel, a little bit less
Mhm.
intimidating. Someone's asking you a
Yeah.
question. You don't have to have a full plan.
You're sitting side by side.
Right, you're
Yeah,
side by side,
exactly.
exactly. Feel a little bit more comfortable. Well, I didn't know when I was first starting that a panel is really an opportunity for you to showcase yourself and your brand and how you can help the people in the audience. And it doesn't always have to be exactly what the moderator thinks it should be. And I
Oh,
remember people asking me questions that I was like, oh, this is not a question that's really going to make me shine right now. This question is kind of like meh, middle of the road. And I used to just answer their question. I don't know why. I just thought that was the
well,
polite
you
thing
were
to
being
do.
nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to be nice,
It's
but
before Not
this
Nice Clever,
podcast is not nice,
obviously.
clever. Exactly. So I have a new approach. So now I want to be
Oh,
clever
she's yelling,
about the
folks.
opportunity. Yeah. I want to be
Mhm.
clever about the opportunity. So what I'm going to do instead is prior to the panel, I'm going to write down 3 things that I want the audience to walk away thinking about me. And then no
Mm.
matter what question comes at me, I'm going to politely answer the question. And in addition, I'm going to make sure that I tell an anecdote or a story or something that's also going to get me to those 3 things that I want the audience to remember about who I am and why they need
Mhm.
me. And I used to be too polite to get that across.
I love that. Pro tip for those starting out, for those growing, learning. We hope that these tips have been helpful. They are literally taken from our very own experience. And if there's a speaking opportunity that you've been kind of on the fence about, and you need some ABF from Candace or some RBF from Kat to convince you to say yes to that opportunity, slide into our DMs. Permission granted at Not Nice Clever on Instagram, and we will catch you on the next episode.